So, let's start with the squad, and there's been obviously the big omissions now. Probably we heard of Maddison. We'll go to Maddison first. Over a week ago, do you believe Maddison should have gone?
No.
No, you agree with Gareth's decision?
Yeah. To be honest, I think I probably agree with all the decisions. I think if Harry Maguire's fit, I think he goes, he plays. Grealish, I would have took him, if I'm being honest. I think Bowen on the right, they've got Saka, they've got Cole Palmer, Foden can play out there. I would have took Grealish instead of Bowen, just to give a bit more balance. I think he brings something a bit different as well. And Branthwaite was one for me. I think just for the balance of the back line, big lad, good on the ball, has a good season. I think for me, I would have took him.
Flav, where are we?
Yeah.
James Maddison. Do you agree with, well, Gareth Southgate?
No, I do. It's unfortunate for Maddison, but if you look at the position that he would have been most effective in, Bellingham's playing there, Eze can play in the middle, Foden can play in the middle, as can Cole Palmer. And while he's an excellent player, just there's too much in his space. There's too much for him to do.
Yeah, I think he'd be disappointed because, especially obviously Eze coming in to the squad, Anthony Gordon coming to the squad, Cole Palmer's obviously had an unbelievable season. I think he can play out wide as well, Maddison, but his best position's number 10, and then just as you said, the lads in there. I think having 26-man squad, Garrett's got the luxury of maybe taking the players who he probably knows, if everyone stays fit, are not going to get on the pitch.
Yeah.
So could he have took Maddison? He probably could have, but
I can't see a world where Maddison would have got enough time to make any tangible difference throughout the tournament. And that's
I agree. The only thing I don't agree with is who did he play the first friendly game?
It's Bosnia, was it?
Bosnia. In that game, I didn't get why Grealish come onto the pitch, Maddison come onto the pitch, if he knew they weren't going to be involved. I didn't understand that.
Was there a fallout? Was there a fallout? He just left early and...
Oh, no, you're talking about the fallout. Sorry, there's a fallout.
He left earlier than the rest of the actual players who...
There was a commotion around the media, and they made it into something that there wasn't, because as ever. But they...
No, but if Flav, if one player leaves 4 days, 5 days before the rest of the players leave, putting 2 and 2 together, ordinarily,
that was a surprise to me when he come out with the players who weren't travelling, who weren't in the squad. I was very surprised at that. Yeah. I thought he should have waited, knowing who he was going to select not to go, and told them after the game, because it was a big worry. Obviously, when John Stones goes down, you're concerned, and you just think after the game, make sure no one's injured, and then tell them, because naming it early, you're always going to get... If I got told I weren't going 2 days before, I would have went home as well. Yeah,
I mean, I to be honest with you, I've probably seen... I've seen it 8 times, 5 as a player, 3 times as a coach. I've never seen a brilliant way of doing it, that you actually either keep the players happy or keep the coaching staff happy. It's always a horrible... You've seen it. It's brutality, actually, in terms of the spirit and people.
The closest thing I could think, my first year as manager at Derby, I had to tell 10 under 21 players that they were getting released, and they'd been at the club since they were 8, and that was very tough. And it was, I don't want to do it again. I'll have to, but that's the closest thing I could think to.
Yeah, that. I used to go in with the young players to see Sir Alex when I was captain for the last 5 years, and when he was releasing them, it wasn't great. And I probably witnessed the worst ever squad cull, if you like, which was the Glenn Hoddle one back in '98, which was... I mean, Glenn just made the simple error of actually putting 5-minute meetings in and 25 players every 5 minutes. And if one player doesn't turn up on time, if one player meeting runs over to 7 or 8 minutes, you had then obviously this queue building up in the corridor. And it was awful. I mean, my brother was one that was left out. Nicky Butt was left out. They weren't the main sort of, if you like, people. But at the time, Gaza was the big one.
So what was he doing with the players who were left in? Just telling them to do it?
So I mean, literally, you got a slot on the board. There was, I think there were 7 players, to be fair. So it would have been 30 of us. And he gave every single player, and he mixed in the players who were being selected and the players that weren't. So there was no order to the actual squad. So I was saying number 6, and I went in not knowing whether I was in or not, even though I was pretty confident. I played quite a few of the games. And he said, you know, you're in the squad. And my brother was in sort of like 3 or 4 after me. But he didn't tell me when I went in that my brother wasn't in. Why would he? You have to separate emotion. But then my brother came out. My brother was absolutely gutted. He was devastated because if you remember, Phil thought he was definitely going to go. 2 reasons. One, John Gorman had told him he was going to go a couple of days before. and Glenn changed his mind because I went to see John the day after. I saw John in the corridors. John was a great bloke. And I just said, look, John, what's happened? I said, you told him he was going to go. He said, I know, Gary, I know. He said, he changed his mind. If you remember what happened, Graham Lasso was our number 1 left wing back. And actually our second left wing back was that tournament, either Paul Merson or Rio Ferdinand. That was the backup left wing back. Phil was certain that he was the only person that could cover both right and left wing back, which Glenn played. So he was pretty certain he was going to be. He was devastated, Phil. You won't believe it, Phil's room was next to Gazza's. So we back in Phil's room. Phil's actually in tears and he's really upset. He's inconsolable. And all of a sudden we just hear this massive racket. And that's when obviously Gaza had been left out. So it was a brutal one, that. And I've lost my thread now, but I'm going to go back to the media. I think sorry, Flav, what was your accusation that the media sort of made trouble? I remember it was something like that. Rory, what's on the Maddison one? Why did he leave early then? Have you got are you across any of that?
I've not heard anything to suggest there was a proper fallout.
Okay.
I would have thought that if you know you're not going, is it not good management to say, look, if you don't want to stick around, go? What's the purpose of Maddison being?
I think you're better not being there. If you're telling them before the game, then the other players are obviously focusing on the game and there's no reason for them to be involved in the game. So if he tells them early, he has to tell them to... He either has to tell them to go home or...
You give them the option.
Or
I'd have stayed there, Wazza.
I wouldn't. No way. Why would you stay?
The reason I'd have stayed there would have been probably...
Just hoping that someone gets injured. That's the only reason you stay.
There's 2 reasons. One, there is an element of duty. I think that ultimately you're in it together. And I always had this feeling in football that if you're left out and you... And I'm not having to go at Maddison, by the way, because he's just said he would leave, and different players deal with things in different ways. The reason I would have stayed would have been, I always used to get really pissed off as a player if someone went mad that they were left out. Because what you're actually saying is that the guy that's been picked in front of you isn't good enough. You think you're better than him, which is fine, don't get me wrong, confidence is good. But at least respect the fact that that guy that's gone into the team doesn't need to hear about your problems. He needs your support. So I can understand, and for me, that's the first thing. You have a duty to be professional.
Not every player is you, and
I get
not every player can give that support. And
I get that.
You've got big players. You've got Grealish there, Harry Maguire, who I know was upset, even though he was injured. But you've got big players and big personalities there. So for them to hide their emotions and support teammates, you'd hope they could do that, but it's very difficult.
I mean, I actually really love Maddison, to be fair. I love him as a character. I wouldn't want him to change one bit. The reason I would have stayed secondly would have been that, let's say that Bellingham not Bellingham didn't play, but let's say Foden got injured somehow in that game. I'd have wanted to make sure, because I think Gareth would look, knowing Gareth as you would and knowing how he would look at it, you're a coach, you'd think, I'm going to pick the guy that stayed. I'm not going to pick the guy that's gone
that's
home.
where I think Gareth should have sent them all on.
Yeah, maybe.
He kept, Quanta.
Yeah.
He kept him there, and I watched him after the game. I was on the side of the pitch doing the TV, and I watched every player walk on the pitch after the game and walk around. As soon as the final whistle went, Quanta goes in. So straight away you've got a split, and he's seen that no one's injured. Yeah. He's probably in, showering, and then leaving. And I fell for him because he was the only one there. So I think Gareth should just said to them all, listen, go home, you're going to miss the game. If there's an injury, be ready. And give them that 24, 48 hours. If anyone gets injured, be ready in case of call you. After that, go on your holidays, whatever.
One of the saddest ones that I've ever seen, actually, was with you. When you came back...
The phone. That was hard, yeah.
So basically, what Jermaine had been asked to do is basically go right up to the edge of the tournament, because there was obviously there was a potential that you wouldn't be fit, 2006 Germany, and that you wouldn't recover. So he walks in, the big man's back.
I walk in and Jermaine walks out.
So Jermaine basically...
I felt so bad.
Jermaine had been with us for 2 or 3 weeks, and Jermaine was a popular player, great professional, and he just we all had to say bye to him. And it was him on his own, so it wasn't like a case. That was, again, it's tough. Going back to players that have been left out, Big Steve, you're keeping very fucking quiet, Steve. And you don't think I'm not going to mention the fact that the greatest team of all time would beat... I mean, look, you're still seething, aren't you? You're going red.
I thought you was going to mention the charges again. That's why I'm going red.
I'll come on to them. Have you recovered, Steve, by the way, before we go on to Jack Grealish?
Yeah, happy. Great season.
Happy with what, losing the FA Cup final? Or?
Oh, no, like, listen, I said it before, you know.
What are you happy about?
Well, sometimes, listen, you've got to give your neighbours a bottle of milk when your fridge is full. We'll let you have that one.
No, that was a keg of Dom Perignon, it wasn't...
No, listen, the better team won on the day. It was... I don't think anyone expected it, but yeah, you deserved it. And like you say, you know, you're not celebrating much these days, so we're helping you out.
I got mixed up between Dom Perignon and Laurent Perrier there, so it shows I don't know my champagne. So, Jack Grealish.
Yeah. I think he's going to be upset. I think it's down the middle, 50-50. A lot of people will say he's not had the best of seasons, he's been injured, you know, he's not been getting picked sometimes off Pep. Jeremy Doku's arrived, totally different winger, very explosive, and the fans are like, they want to see that. Yeah. But as you seen the other night, like what Wayne said, he offers something different. He come on against Bosnia, it looked like he changed the game a little bit. I think he can control the game deep. I don't think he loses the ball. I think he offers something a little bit different. So it was a bit of a surprise to me to not take him. By all accounts, I don't think he was expecting not to go. I think he was expecting to go. But Gareth seems to have be picking players on form, and sometimes he's been criticised in the past for not doing that. People saying he's got his favourites and that, you should pick this player, and he's not done that. And then now he has done that. He's picked Eze and people like that, and people are criticising him again. So, I mean, he's going to live and die by his decisions. I think as a Manchester City fan, I'm disappointed that he's not gone, but I will accept that he hasn't had the greatest of seasons. But what Wayne said, I do think Jack Grealish offers something different to a lot of them lads there. I think we are heavy on the right-hand side. I think the left-hand side, we are a little bit weaker. I wouldn't like to see Foden playing out wide either. I feel like he needs to play in the 10 after the season he's had. So, yeah, as a City fan, I'm disappointed, but talking to the lads backstage and that, I think it's like 50-50.
I think what you can't... There's no substitute for players who are winning trophies. I think it's so important, and, you know, there's not many in the England squad who've done that. The City players, obviously, who have been doing that regularly over the last few years. So I just think there's a real lack of experience in the squad. That's my worry. And on the back line, there's not many caps between the players. So when you get to them later stages, and I done it when I first signed for Manchester United. You know, you get to finals and you get into the end of tournament, semi-finals, etc. We're looking at these lads who've been there, they've won trophies, and they keep you calm and they get you through it. So that's my worry for England. I think they'll breeze through the group stages, but when they come up against good teams who are going to be a real threat to them, I think just that lack of experience might harm us.
I just want to come on to another reason why I'm just thinking about, obviously, Gareth. He's the most experienced, I think, England person I think we'll ever see in terms of just understanding tournaments, understanding coaching, understanding the FA. I will come to you, Rory, in terms of a thought I've got around Grealish and Maddison. They are media darlings, they are fan darlings, and I just think Gareth doesn't do distraction, and I think there will be an element of, in the game one, if we're a bit methodical, if we're a bit rigid, they're obviously going to want sort of, if you like, Bellingham and Foden in there, but there's going to be this clamber. You know, there always is for Jack. You know, there always is for Maddison. There's just this feeling that they are the sort of the Gascoigne, this idea. Do you think that's one of the factors that could be in Gareth's mind? I
think he's really conscious of that. He doesn't like that kind of that extra. There's enough pressure for Southgate as it is. He doesn't need this kind of endless pressure to play this whichever player the media, as a media spokesman, whichever player the media's decided should be in the team. I think Southgate probably resents that and probably rightly resents it. Maybe the fact that Maddison, second half of the season, by his own admission, not been to his level, and the fact that Grealish has been in and out a little. But I would have taken Grealish. I think what Wayne says about not so much, it's not experience in terms of caps for England. You want players who've played in the last stages of the Champions League. That's what you need. That's the highest level of football. You need players who are, as many players as you can get, who've got experience under that pressure. Because when you get to the quarterfinals and the semis, it's that level of pressure you have to be able to cope. And Grealish, I think you maybe could have taken for that. The other thing, I don't know how much this applies in football, but in cricket they talk a lot about good tourists.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the team, you have to be a good tourist.
I wasn't going to go down that route because I don't think we've heard from either Tottenham or from City that Grealish and Maddison are unpopular squad members or people. You know what I mean? I was going to go there and ask you, is there an element of them being a little bit itchy on the bench and a little bit sort of like in training the day after a game they don't play and stuff like that? Do you think there is an element of that?
You never hear enough. You've certainly not heard enough about either of them to say they're a bad influence in the camp.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I wonder whether certain players are more comfortable in that role. The media then comes into it.
I think that's ridiculous if they're left out the squad for that reason, because you look around every country, every team, the players, the best players, there's always, demands them from the media, and that's part of the game, I think. So to leave players out, if that's the case for that reason, I think that's ridiculous. I think.
But Sir Alex would do that. He would make decisions like that.
If you look at tournaments, who's going to win it for Brazil? Not the Euros, but at home, probably Vinicius Junior. And there's a lot of talk around Vinicius. Who's going to win it for France? Mbappe. So you don't leave players out. They're probably the players who have got the character and they've got that strength to be able to deal with it. So if they're not there, we've seen it with Raheem in 2016, how much he struggled. If they're not there, so now all of a sudden they go on to a different player who actually can't cope with it. It becomes even worse. So I think having good characters who, there might be pressure on them, but who've got that strength to deal with it, I think they're important to have.
That's a question. You mentioned about young players going, deep into the competition. Is it so important that you have older players that have been through it?
100%.
Is there any element of some of these young players that haven't experienced defeat and therefore they don't have any fear? Like in 2004, you came in, it looked like you had no fear about playing at all. Yeah,
but if you think in 2004, I was probably the only one. There's so many players now where, I could go to any other player in the squad and, get advice off them or just guidance on certain things. Where now you've got Gay, you've got Conte, you've got Mainu, Wharton, the amount of players who barely play, Cole Palmer, Eze, so many players, and what'll happen naturally is they'll probably stick together. And then when it starts getting tough, they'd be talking, saying, what do we do? Because they're in a group where I was on my own, I weren't in a group, so I could go to anyone and say, I'm a bit worried here. So I think for me that's the issue, that there's so many players, not that they're not good enough or not that they don't deserve to be there. I think there's so many players that have got lack of caps, lack of tournament football. You need that Harry Maguire, Grealish for me to bring that experience into the squad.
The other player that you mentioned was Branthwaite. I mean, that is the area that, to be fair, I think over the last 4, 5, 6 years that we would say would be the Achilles heel for Gareth, and even more so now this tournament. I know we're saying it's either us or France, but you have to look at our defence and think we've got real issues there.
I was worried before he announced the squad, and after he announced the squad, I was like, I'm not sure here.
More worried.
And then after watching the Iceland game, I was like, I know, but there'll be players like Harry Kane and the more experienced players who'll see that game as just get me through the game, don't want to get injured, where some of the other players are playing to try and start the game, and so they're playing as well as they can, they're giving everything they can to try and start in the game, and Iceland should have been 2 or 3 and up, and they were all over the place, the back line was all over the place, there was no communication. I think that's a key thing, there was no communication coming from them, and that's why England were getting pulled apart a little bit, especially on transition, so that's a concern for me, Dan.
Let's go to Dan. Where are you, Dan? Did you ever think Crystal Palace would become the feeder club for England?
It's not something that was in my crystal ball, shall we say. But at the same time, I do think that our recruitment over the last 3 or 4 years has done what it's supposed to have done. We brought Eze in from QPR. He was a player that everyone knew in the Championship had the ability to go and play at the Premier League level. Adam Wharton, he's had a meteoric rise since coming in from Blackburn. That is no disservice at all to Blackburn. Obviously, he was a fantastic player for them. But I don't think even any Blackburn fan I spoke to expected him to play as well as he has in this 3 months. Gay, you know, he's been a rock at the back of our team for the last 3 or 4 years. I think he's there on merit. Obviously, if Harry Maguire was fit, he'd be starting next to John Stones, but I think there's a solid chance that Mark starts now next to John Stones because of the left side. And, you know, obviously you're going to get a lot of people say four Palace players in the Euro squad, you know, it shows a lack of quality options. But at the same time, I think the last 3 or 4 months of our form under Oliver Glasner was, you know, incredible, and they're there on merit. I don't think there's anyone that can look at any of the four and say they don't deserve an opportunity. I don't think Eze and Wharton are necessarily going to get many minutes. I think Gay, as I say, will start, and obviously Henderson's the third choice. But, you know, there's definitely a chance that Eze can come on and do something with 20 minutes to go. I think Wharton, you know, as much as it was only a cameo against Bosnia, he was so calm and so assured for someone who's still 20 in his first ever England game. So I think he can be relied upon. And yeah, it's a great thing for us as a club, really.
I'm looking at sort of what the things are that Gareth's done different. He's done a number of things differently in this last sort of 7 years, 8 years. I think there has been, it goes against what you said before about picking players from clubs that have been successful and been Champions League clubs. Going back to say, I remember in Sven's time, he almost wouldn't pick a player unless they were in the Champions League. So it was always basically Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, with predominantly the whole squad felt like it was from those clubs. And there was an elitist approach. Actually, I think the one thing that Gareth's done differently than probably all the other managers that I've seen in the last 20 years is, and it maybe comes down to his own career of playing, obviously, where he played, he didn't play at sort of, if you like, a top 4 club. He has removed that sort of feeling that it doesn't matter where you play, who you play for, you know, I will pick you for England. And I actually think that's been one of the big positives that he's changed.
He's brought players into the squad before they're ready as well. And I think he's trying to get them to a place where they are ready. And I know I was there when Gareth first started. I was still playing. And we had players coming up from the under-21s to train with us. And so he's trying to get them some more experience of being around the England squad. So I think what he's done is great. And I actually pulled out of the England squad when I was with Gareth because I was at I turned up every training session, played every game. But then my last year at United with Mourinho, I weren't playing. So I went in to see Gareth. I was captain of England at the time. I said, I don't deserve to play. I'm not playing for Manchester United. And I always had the feeling that if I'm not playing, you have to earn the right to play for England. And so I said, I don't think I should be selected. So it actually helped him because I think at the time he was worried about it.
Yeah, okay, Wayne. We're not hoping that he go, no, Wayne, come here, come on.
So what he done, we had a good conversation, and then he picked the squad, and I went in, whatever, so, but then he went, yeah, that's the belief. He come out and said, if you're not playing for your club, you're not playing for your country. And then he picked Hudson-Odoi from Chelsea, who hadn't even played for Chelsea. I never knew that. I would have stayed in the squad.